What if I told you that the one lure you trust more than any other, the one tied on 9 times out of 10, is the exact reason you're getting skunked this January? It sounds crazy, right? We all have that one confidence bait, the one that's bent, scarred, and has more fish stories attached to it than any other piece of tackle in our box. But today we're going to challenge that belief. We're going to reveal the hard biological truth about why your old reliable is likely working directly against the survival instincts of a winter fish. Stick around, because what you learn today might just be the reason your next January trip is a success instead of another cold, fishless day. Let me ask you this to start. Do you think a fish's instinct is stronger than your lure's reputation? Let me know what you think down below. For years, we've been told the same thing. Confidence is key. We tie on that favorite crankbait or that trusty spinnerbait because it's worked 100 times before. It becomes a habit, a ritual. We believe in the lure. We fish it hard, we cover water, and we expect to bite because, well, it's our old reliable. This habit is reinforced all spring, summer, and fall. But then January hits, the air is cold, the water is clear, and the lake is silent. We keep throwing that same lure and we get nothing. We blame the weather, the barometric pressure, or just bad luck. But the problem isn't the fish and it's not the lake. The problem is that we are trying to apply warm water logic to a cold water world. We are failing to adapt because we trust our habit more than we trust the science of what's happening beneath the surface. First, let's set the scene. It's a January morning. The water temperature is hovering around 40 degrees. To us, that's just a number. To a largemouth bass and cold-blooded creature, it's a biological crisis. This isn't just chilly water, it's a fundamental shift in their entire world. Their body is in survival mode. Every single function, from digestion to movement, slows down dramatically. Think of it like a computer running in low power mode. It can only perform the most essential tasks. It's not looking for a big project or an exciting adventure. It's just trying to get by with the absolute minimum effort. This is the reality of the fish you're targeting. They are not the aggressive eating machines you remember from May. They are lethargic, conserving energy at all costs, and this single fact changes everything about how you should approach them with a lure. Now let's talk metabolism. This is the key that unlocks the entire puzzle. A bass's metabolism is directly tied to the water temperature. In 75-degree water, a bass might digest a big bluegill in a day or two. It's burning calories fast, so it needs to eat often and aggressively. In 40-degree water, that same meal could take a week or more to digest. The fish is physically incapable of processing food quickly. Because of this, it doesn't need to eat nearly as often. It might only feed once every few days or even less. So right off the bat, the feeding windows are drastically smaller. You're not just trying to find a fish. You're trying to find a fish during one of the very rare moments it's actually interested in eating. This slow metabolism is the foundational reason why your fast-paced summer tactics are doomed to fail. This leads us to the predator's energy budget. Every living thing operates on a simple calculation. Is the energy gained from an action greater than the energy spent? For a January bass, this equation is life or death. Chasing down a fast-moving lure is an enormous expenditure of energy. It's a high-risk gamble. If it catches the lure, it gets a meal. If it misses, it has just wasted precious calories that it cannot easily replace. A lethargic fish, with its slowed metabolism, is almost always going to decide that the chase is not worth the potential reward. Its instincts are screaming, "Conserve energy." So when a lure zips past its head, the fish's brain does the math in an instant and concludes that letting it go is the smarter, safer bet. It's not that the fish isn't hungry, It's that your offering is demanding too high a price in energy. So what is the natural prey doing in this cold water environment? Are they zipping around? No, of course not. They're in the same boat as the bass, the baitfish, the crawdads, the bluegill. They are all cold-blooded and lethargic. They huddle together in deeper, more stable water. They barely move. The only ones that are easy targets are the ones that are sick, dying, or disoriented. Think about what a dying shad looks like. It doesn't sprint. It quivers. It falls slowly. It makes a few last subtle twitches, and then it's still. This is the image of a perfect low-energy meal for a January bass. It's an opportunity that requires almost no effort to capitalize on. This slow, dying, or completely still presentation is what the bass are genetically programmed to look for during the winter. It's the only meal that makes sense for their energy budget. Now let's bring your old reliable into this picture. For many of us, that's a spinnerbait with big, thumping blades, or maybe it's a squarebill crankbait that deflects hard off of cover, or a chatterbait that vibrates so hard it shakes the rod tip. Think about the defining characteristics of these lures. They are all about speed, aggression, and vibration. They are designed to trigger reaction strikes from active, feeding fish. They are made to cover water quickly and call fish in from a distance. In the summer, these are their greatest strengths. They perfectly imitate a fleeing baitfish or an agitated crawdad, and they force a competitive bass to make a split-second decision to eat. They are, in every sense of the word, power fishing lures designed for a high-energy environment. Here is the fundamental mismatch. You have a fish in a low-energy survival state, and you are presenting it with a high-energy, aggressive lure. It's a complete sensory and biological contradiction. The speed is all wrong. Nothing natural is moving that fast in 40-degree water. The vibration is all wrong. That hard thump doesn't signal an easy meal. It signals something powerful, unnatural, and potentially threatening. You're essentially trying to communicate in a language the fish doesn't understand, or worse, a language it interprets as danger. Imagine you're trying to coax a timid squirrel to take a nut from your hand. You wouldn't run at it screaming, would you? You'd move slowly, quietly, and present the offering gently. We need to apply that same logic to winter fish. Your old reliable is screaming and the fish just want to whisper. Let's think about it from the fish's point of view. It's sitting there barely moving, maybe tucked up next to a rock or a log. Its whole world is slow and quiet. Suddenly this flashing, violently shaking object comes ripping through its space. The bass doesn't think, oh look, a shad. Its primitive brain, honed by millions of years of evolution, registers this as a major disturbance. It's an anomaly. It could be a larger predator. It could be something that will harm it. The instinct is not to attack it for food, but to either flee from it or freeze and let the danger pass. By using a loud, fast lure, you are not triggering a feeding instinct, you are triggering a survival instinct. And the survival instinct in this case is to avoid your lure at all costs. You're inadvertently convincing the fish that your bait is the last thing it should ever try to eat. Let's use an analogy. Your lure is shouting in a library. In the summertime, the lake is like a rock concert. It's loud, there's a lot of activity. And to get noticed, you have to be loud too. A big thumping spinnerbait fits right in. But in January, the lake is a library. Everything is quiet and subdued. A bass's lateral line is incredibly sensitive, and in that quiet environment, it can detect the most subtle movements. When you throw that spinnerbait, its vibration is overwhelming. It's the equivalent of someone setting off a car alarm next to you while you're trying to read. It's jarring, it's unpleasant, and it makes you want to get away from the source of the noise. The fish feel the same way. The very vibration that calls them in during the summer is now pushing them away. Color theory also plays a huge role here. Winter water is often much clearer than in the summer, as colder water holds less suspended sediment and algae growth is minimal. In the summer, a bright chartreuse or a flashy fire tiger color can be great for getting a fish's attention in stained water, but in crystal clear cold water, those same colors look completely artificial and out of place. The natural bait fish are typically subdued, with colors like silver, pearl, and translucent gray. When a bass that has been staring at these natural muted colors all day suddenly sees a neon-painted lure go by, it screams fake. You need to match the hatch, not just in size and shape, but also in color and transparency. Natural, subtle colors are far more likely to get a close look from a wary winter fish than the loud, gaudy colors on many of our old, reliable lures. So what is the correct instinct we should be appealing to? It's the instinct to conserve energy and ambush prey. A winter bass isn't going to roam around and hunt for food. It's going to find a good spot, a piece of cover, a drop-off, a rock pile, where an easy meal might drift by, and it's going to wait there. It's an ambush predator in the truest sense of the word. It's waiting for that dying shad or that slow-moving crawfish to come to it. The perfect meal is one that requires a movement of only a few inches to acquire. The fish wants to simply open its mouth, flare its gills, and inhale the food with minimal effort. This is the behavior we have to cater to. We need to present our lure as that perfect, effortless opportunity. And this is precisely how your old, reliable power lure breaks the ambush rule. A crankbait or a spinnerbait is a search bait. It's designed to be cast out and reeled back in, covering a lot of water in the process. You are actively searching for the fish. But this method completely ignores the fish's ambush behavior. The lure is only in the strike zone of that waiting, stationary base for a fraction of a second as it speeds by. The fish doesn't have time to analyze it, decide it's a safe meal, and then react. By the time its slow, cold brain processes the information, the lure is already 10 feet away. You are fishing for a fish that wants to ambush, but you're not giving it anything to ambush. You're just giving it a series of high-speed flybys. The real January menu, as we touched on, is the dying bait fish. This is the single most important concept to grasp. As the water gets colder, some baitfish, particularly threadfin, shad in many reservoirs, cannot handle the temperature shock. They begin to die off. They become disoriented, they twitch, and they slowly sink. For bass, this is an all-you-can-eat buffet that requires almost no work. They position themselves under these schools of bait and simply wait for the dying ones to fall right into their mouths. This is the behavior you must imitate. Your lure needs to look and act like one of these easy, dying morsels. It has to be the most pathetic, helpless-looking thing in the water. It has to look like a meal that is absolutely guaranteed, with zero chance of escape and zero energy required to capture it. So how do we mimic this with what I call the do-nothing technique? It's about putting your lure in a high-percentage spot and letting it sit there. And then letting it sit there some more. This is the absolute opposite of power fishing. This is patience fishing. It involves casting your bait out, letting it sink to the bottom, and then doing almost nothing. Maybe you move it 6 inches every 30 seconds. Maybe you just let it sit completely still for a full minute. You have to give that lethargic, waiting base all the time in the world to see your lure swim over to it slowly, inspect it, and then finally decide to suck it in. The bite won't be a jarring thump. It will often feel like a little bit of mushy weight, or your line will just start slowly swimming away. It requires intense focus on your line, not on feeling the lure. This brings us to lure alternative number 1, the Ned rig. There is perhaps no better lure for imitating a small, helpless piece of food on the bottom. Its design is pure genius for winter. The mushroom-style head allows the soft plastic to stand straight up off the bottom when it's at rest. Looks like a tiny creature or a minnow nosing around for food. And it does this while you are doing nothing. You can just let it sit there. And it still has a lifelike profile. A tiny drag of a few inches is all the action you need. The small size is also key. A winter base isn't looking for a huge meal. A small 2.5 or 3-inch snack is the perfect, easy-to-digest morsel. The Ned rig is the king of the do-nothing technique. Now, what if the fish are suspended and not on the bottom? Here's lure alternative number 2, the jerkbait, but not fished the way you do in the spring. In spring, you might go twitch, twitch, pause. In January, you need to think twitch and then pause for a very, very long time. I'm talking a 10-second pause, a 15-second pause, sometimes even a 20-second pause. When a suspending jerkbait sits perfectly still in the water column, it looks exactly like one of those stunned or dying shad we talked about. It is the ultimate ambush trigger. The fish will see it, slowly move into position below it, and then, often during that long pause, it will drift up and just inhale it. Your old, reliable crankbait plows through this zone in a second. The jerkbait can stay there for as long as you have the patience to let it. For fish that are grouped up vertically in deep water, we have lure alternative number 3, the blade bait or a jigging spoon. This is another technique that perfectly mimics a dying shad. You're not casting and retrieving. You are positioning your boat directly over the fish you see on your electronics. You drop the lure down to them and use small, vertical hops of the rod tip. You lift it up a foot or two, and then you let it fall on a semi-slack line. Almost 100% of the bites will come as the lure is fluttering down, imitating that dying shade's last descent. It's a precise, targeted technique that presents the perfect easy meal right in front of their faces. It requires electronics and boat control, but it's a deadly way to capitalize on the fish's natural winter behavior. Ultimately, this all requires a massive mindset shift. The goal is no longer to cover water. The goal is to soak a spot. You have to abandon the urge to constantly be casting and reeling. You have to get comfortable with stillness and silence. Your new strategy is to identify high-percentage winter locations, like deep channel swings, bluff ends, or main lake points, and then meticulously and slowly pick them apart. Instead of making 100 casts on a bank, you might only make 10 casts to one specific rock pile, but each cast is fished with extreme patience, letting the lure sit and soak for long periods. You're no longer hunting the fish down, you're setting a perfect trap and waiting for the fish to come to you. It's a completely different style of fishing, and it's the one that winter demands. Let me paint you a picture I've seen 100 times. Imagine 2 anglers fishing the same winter bank. Angler 1 is throwing his old, reliable chatterbait. He's a great fisherman. He's making perfect casts, covering the water efficiently, convinced he'll trigger a reaction strike. He fishes the entire bank in 30 minutes and gets nothing. Angler 2 pulls up behind him with a Ned rig. He makes one cast to a promising-looking submerged rock. He lets it sit. He waits. He slowly drags it a few inches. He waits some more. 5 minutes go by on that single cast. Then his line just tightens up, and he reels in a 5-pounder. He didn't have a magic lure. He just had the right mindset. He was speaking the language of a January base, while the first angler was still shouting in the language of July. Now, is there ever an exception to this rule? Can old reliable ever work in the dead of winter? Yes, but in very specific situations. The most common is a significant warming trend. If you get 3 or 4 straight days of sunny, warmer than average weather, the surface temperature in shallow areas can rise a few degrees. This can be enough to make base slightly more active for a brief period, and a slower-rolled spinnerbait or a crankbait might get a bite. Another exception is around warm water discharges like those from a power plant. These areas can keep fish in a permanent state of spring or fall, and traditional tactics can work. But for 99% of us, on 99% of natural lakes in January, these exceptions don't apply. Assuming they do is a recipe for a long, cold day of casting practice. So what's the final verdict on your old, reliable lure? My advice is simple. Put it away. Thank it for its service during the warmer months, and store it in a different box until the water temperature comes back up into the 50s. Trying to force it to work in January is an exercise in frustration. It's like trying to use a hammer to turn a screw. It's the wrong tool for the job. Your success in the winter will be determined by your ability to embrace slowness, subtlety, and patience. Trust the biology of the fish, not the history of your favorite lure. Accept that January is a different game with a different set of rules. The anglers who understand and adapt to these rules are the ones who consistently catch fish when everyone else has given up and gone home. So, to wrap it all up, the big takeaway here isn't just that you should use a different lure. The real aha moment, the twist, is realizing that your confidence in a lure can actually be a massive liability. That old, reliable bait feels good to throw because of past success, but it's blinding you to the present reality of the fish's world. The most profound change you can make to your winter fishing isn't in your tackle box, it's in your head. It's the shift from an aggressive hunter to a patient trapper. Understanding that the fish's metabolism and energy budget dictate everything is the key that unlocks winter fishing. It explains why doing nothing is often more effective than doing something. This single change in perspective will do more for your success than any secret lure ever could. Thank you so much for watching and for being willing to challenge some old habits with me. If this video gave you a new way to think about winter fishing, do me a favor and hit that like button. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on more content that dives deep into fish behavior. Now, I have a question for you all, and I really want to see the discussion in the comments. What is the longest you've ever intentionally paused a lure or let it sit still on the bottom before getting a bite? Let's see who has the most patience out there.